Hello my sweet friends and welcome to DIY with Nadia. If you are looking for simple, quick, easy, and of course budget-friendly wreaths, you came to the right place. In this video you will find many Christmas styles, meaning modern, farmhouse, traditional Christmas decor, or even glam. So without further ado, let's get started. To get started on this wreath, I'm going to prepare my floral wire and set it to the side. Then I'm going to find where my infinity scarf connects, and you can either cut it along the line or you can remove stitching like I did, because depending on how your scarf was sewn together, it can add an inch to the length of your scarf. Now I'm going to start wrapping the scarf around my Dollar Tree foam wreath form, and this one is 9.8 inches. I'm starting by grabbing 12 to 15 inches of the scarf and just holding it in place with one hand, and with the other hand I'm going to start tightly wrapping the scarf around my wreath, going all the way around, keeping it nice and tight. I didn't want it loose, I want it tight. When you come to the end, you want to overlap both tails, one tail going to the one side, the other tail going to the other side. Where you have that right in the middle, that is where I'm going to bring in my floral wire, and I'm going to tie it really tightly around both of the tails. As I said, one tail needs to go up, the other one needs to go down. This is what's going to lock the scarf in place. To decorate both tails of my scarf, I'm going to make little slits in it. I kept them about 1/2 inch wide, and I also went in about 1.5 to 2 inches. Just keep it simple. Don't make it too long. Don't make it too short. 1.5 inch to 2 inches is perfect. Next, I'm grabbing this really simple and beautiful pick from the Dollar Tree. And the first thing I did was I removed the florals that came with it. And then I grabbed the Christmas tree greenery that came with it. And I'm going to put it facing the opposite way. This way it will balance out the greenery, and then it will also cover that tail that I'm also going to trim a little bit. I cut about 1.5 inches of it later on, but I'm going to bring both sides together with a little floral wire, and you have a beautiful and elegant green background for the wreath. And I'm attaching it to the wreath right underneath where I attached the tails. Next, I'm just going to place the tails to the side and kind of play around with them, making sure they're nice and pretty. Next, I'm just grabbing a few poinsettias from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to hot glue them right on top of the greenery, right in the middle. And this is what's going to give it that pop of white and just this elegance to this wreath. When I displayed my wreath, I realized that the greenery was just blending in with the red a little too much. So I brought it back into my studio and I dry brushed some white paint on all the greenery, the berries, the pine cones. And I'm sorry I don't have footage for this, but you will see that it turned out absolutely stunning, and that white made all the difference in the world. For this wreath, I'm going to be using 2 microfiber pads from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going right in between the stitch lines to cut each microfiber pad into 4 sections. Now I'm using some hot glue, attaching strips to the wreath and just wrapping them all the way around. Now I'm grabbing this pick and I'm just grabbing the greenery from it and hot gluing it in the top center of the wreath. I love the greenery because it's already painted white a little bit and it looks frosty. Next, let's do the bow. I'm going to start by approximating how big I want my bow and then just cutting that ribbon down. And I'm using this burlap ribbon with lace over it, and I'm grabbing some polka dot grosgrain ribbon and hot gluing it right on top of the lace, securing each end to the back of the burlap. Now I'm just making my simple bow, bringing it together with a piece of floral wire in the middle and hot gluing it to the top center of the wreath. Using another pick from the Dollar Tree, I'm just grabbing the berries, then cutting 2 little strips to put on top of the greenery and a small piece of berries to hot glue in the middle of the bow. For this wreath, I'm using the Woodblend wreath from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to give it 1 coat of Rust-Oleum chalk paint. Next, I'm grabbing 10 pine cones and I will give them a coat of white chalk paint. Now that my pine cones are nice and dry and they have a good white base, I'm going in with a pretty pink and I'm giving all the pine cones a good coat of that beautiful pink paint. Next, I'm grabbing some Mod Podge and I'm going to put glitter right on top of those pine cones. They will give such an elegant and beautiful addition to my wreath. For this wreath, I will also be using these mini ornaments, then the silver and white iridescent vase fillers, a few of these star vase fillers from the 4th of July, and then I'm going to be using the fern greenery as my base. I'm going to decorate 3/4 of my wreath, leaving 1/4 empty just as it is. So that's why I'm starting with my fern so I can see the edges of where I'm going to be working. Then I'm just grabbing all this greenery that I had left over from previous projects and just hot gluing it all around the section that I'm working on. Next, I'm grabbing the mini silver ornaments and I'm just popping off the little tops from them and then just hot gluing them all around the wreath. You want to start with those because those are your bigger pieces before we get into the smaller one. Next, I'm using the stars because those are also quite big comparing to the other pieces. Then I'm just working on my white iridescent and silver vase fillers. Now for the pine cones, I'm just balancing everything out and trying to spread them out throughout the wreath. And if there was any spots open, I went back and filled in with the mini little vase fillers. To hang my wreath, I'm grabbing a piece of ribbon I had on hand, feeding it through the vines in the back of the wreath, making a little knot, and I'm ready to hang my wreath. For this super easy wreath, I'm going to use this scarf that I found at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to actually use 2 of them. And the first thing I did was cut my foam wreath so I can feed the scarf through. And then I'm just going to undo the edges. Without cutting, I just unstitched it so I don't waste any of the scarf. And I'm just feeding it onto my wreath. To bring my wreath back together, I did try to use some hot glue, but that was a definite fail because it just melted the foam. So I just did a few layers of this clear packing tape and it worked absolutely fine. For the bow, I will be using this buffalo check ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I want a bigger tail on here, so I just measured my tail. Then I'm going to do 4 loops, meaning 2 loops on each side of my bow, and bring it together with a piece of floral wire. To prevent fraying and to make sure my tail is nice and pretty, I'm going to fold the edge over about 1/4 of an inch, put some hot glue right there, and then fold my tail into a little triangle. And then I'm going to pinch the edge and the triangle to make sure it's nice and crisp. Next, I'm hot gluing the bow straight onto the wreath form. You can also just use a string and tie it on. For the bow tails, we are going to be using the ribbon method. All I'm doing is folding the ribbon under and pinching it in the back so you have a nice smooth loop in the front. And as you can see, I'm going to do it twice for each one of the tails. As you can see here, I tried a red pom-pom on here and I just did not like the way it looked, so I cut it off and I grabbed 3 cotton balls and hot glued them to the center of the ribbon, and oh my goodness, it made all the difference in the world. To hang this wreath, I'm just grabbing a piece of ribbon I had on hand and it was a perfect red match, and I'm just cutting it off and pinning both of the ends together and straight onto the foam wreath. For this wreath, we are going to be using 6 rolls of this decorative mesh, and we're going to cut the mesh into 14-inch strips. You are going to have 7 per roll. To cover the green foam, I'm using a roll of grosgrain ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and if you go slow and hot glue throughout the way, 1 roll will be enough. Now I'm just taking each one of the strips, folding them in half, and tying them on the side of the wreath. That's it. I'm not even double tying. Because of the type of mesh this is, it's not going to slide and it's going to stay pretty secure. Now I'm going to go all the way around the wreath using up all my strips. For decor, I'm using these ornaments from the Dollar Tree, and the first thing I wanted to do is cover those little holes on top, so I'm just using a hot glue gun, and using a finger protector, I'm just smoothing the hot glue over the ornament. Next, I'm painting both of the ornaments in a Craft Smart acrylic paint called Ocean Breeze. I'm just giving both of the ornaments one coat. I'm giving my ornaments a layer of Mod Podge and then using this gorgeous chunky glitter, and it's called Snowy Surprise. I got it at Walmart, and I'm going to give it a nice coat on top of these trees. I wanted the glitter to look like snow on top of the trees. Just so you guys can see the difference, here's a tree with glitter and here's one without glitter. What do you think? Not a big glitter person myself, but this looks absolutely stunning. Let me know what you think. Now I'm just glittering up the second tree, and I'm going to let both of the trees dry for an hour. Next, I'm grabbing this cute little deer that I got for $1.98 at Walmart, and I'm going to remove the top little tag that was on top of the deer's head. And I'm sorry I did it kind of off screen, but I just removed it to make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I'm just hot gluing everything where I feel like it needs to go. So I put one tree a little higher, one a little lower, and then Bambi kind of went to the side. And I think this wreath turned out absolutely beautiful, and I have it hanging in my living room right now. To hang my wreath, I'm just adding a piece of transparent ribbon to the top of my wreath. For this easy wreath, we are just using some tinsel from the Dollar Tree and wrapping it around our foam wreath form. After we're done wrapping it around, we are going to decorate with a silver jingle bell ornament from the Dollar Tree. At this point, you can attach the ornament as is, but that blob of hot glue in the front really bothered me. So I'm grabbing some pine cone potpourri, and I'm going to grab a tiny little pine cone and then just cut the end of it and hot glue it as the third little pine cone in that little bundle. I also added a bigger pine cone on the other side of the ornament, kind of to balance everything out. To hang my ornament, I'm just very carefully putting a pin through the ribbon, inserting it into the wreath, and covering up with the tinsel. For Snowman wreath, we're starting with two of these wood blend wreaths. The small one is 9 inches in diameter and this big one is 12 inches in diameter. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give both of these wreaths about 2 coats of the chalked Rust-Oleum paint in linen white. Using a brush that's kind of shabby because it's going to be easier to get in all those crevices. Your other choice would be to spray paint it if you wish, but it's a little cold here in Chicago already. It's in the 40s and I really don't like spray painting at home, so I'm just going to paint it with my chalk paint. This wreath is so easy that this next part is pretty much the hardest part of the wreath, and that is connecting them. So I'm going to go around my wreath and try to find the flattest part, which I think is this part right here. And then the flattest part on this side, which kind of looks like this right here. And I need to unite them. And I can't just unite them together. I need to go through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tunnel through. Okay, so I got one this way, and then I want at least 2 right here going the other way. I'm just going to use a letter opener to kind of wiggle my way through here. Don't worry if you scratch the paint at this point, because this part is going to be hidden. Okay, so what I did there is I tunneled it and then kind of twisted it open, and then it opened up so I can put this part in. And I'm going to go about 1 inch to the other side and try to get in there too. And I did the smaller one first just because I feel like the other one would be a lot easier to get through. So first, let's turn it upside down. We're going to do the middle one. And since I got it this way, I'm just going to go in and lock it in place. And then I'm going to grab one more zip tie and just go over both of these, even though, look how strong this is, look. So this worked so well, and all I did was I put one going this way, the next two coming another way, so you have connection from both sides, and then one just to kind of bring everything together. Okay, now it's time to decorate our wreath, and here are a few things that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using a little branch of this, then I am going to use 2 of these picks. One of these that has an apple. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this apple. This little guy right here, it's very sad looking. So I'm going to remove it completely. And that is why I'm going to be including this. First, I'm going to be placing this pick, and I opened it up a little bit. Then I'm going to be coming in with this pick, and I'm going to go to the other side to see how I like things or where I like things. I'm going to grab another zip tie, and I'm going to zip tie these in place. I'm going to grab another one of these just to even out all the redness that's on this side and bring a little pick right there. And I'm attaching it to this pick straight to the center. This pick I do need to cut. This is not going to be easy because this is a pretty strong one. Okay, I cut that, and there was a wire that was sticking out. Wrap it around and secure this whole pick in place. Now the pine cones, the big one, I'm going to face the other way to cover this right here. Bend it just like that, and I'm going to put that right there, just like that. And then this pine cone is going to cover this area right here. Now I'm grabbing a piece of floral wire, and I'm going to wrap it around to secure the pine cone in place. I'm going to give it a little bit of hot glue just to put it in place. And I'm going to add this little pine cone. Next, I need to see where I want this little piece to go. When I decided where it's going, and I want it kind of to be centered. And right there where I bent it, that's where I'm going to connect it. Now I'm going to put the zip tie pretty much in the center because that is where I want to connect it. But I'm not going all the way down. I'm not going around. I'm trying to kind of sneak it in between. And then I'm grabbing my little piece. And by the way, I did bend it right here. You want to bend it just a little bit because it's a circle. So you want it to kind of lay really nicely on there. To attach it, I'm going to move this branch down and my little leaf right here. And I'm going to attach it right there. This way we can hide the zip tie with the green little branch that I moved. And I got my little branch right here. And I'm going to put it right there. Maybe another piece right on top. For our snowman hat, I'm going to be using this ornament, and I'm going to remove the little hanging piece right here. So when you decide where you finally want your little hat, you can face it down a little bit. That's okay. That's what I'm going to be doing. Is I'm not going to be putting it flat. I'm going to face it down just a little bit. What you want to do is in that area, grab a piece of fluffy pipe cleaner. Not thin, but fluffy. The reason I'm doing this is for more surface area. Here's what I mean by that. Our Santa's hat is going to be right here, and it's going to be attached here or there. I want to make sure that it's going to attach really, really well. So I'm basically making more surface area. And hot glue sticks really well to these pipe cleaners. Okay, this is what mine looks like. This is basically paper, so you can bend it down also to cover that if you needed to. I'm going to really give it lots of hot glue. And now I'm grabbing some buffalo check ribbon. This is called Farmhouse. I'm going to just make a small little bow. Dot of glue. Figure out where I want it. And that way this part is going to cover the center right here. Move my pine cones around. That is it. I'm going to grab a permanent marker and cover this area where the jute cord was attached. Just dabbing permanent marker on right there, and it's gone. Grabbing a sheer ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and this is sheer white ribbon, cutting off a little piece, and then I'm just going to hot glue one on top of the other. And since it's sheer, grabbing my little finger protector. That is it. We are ready to hang our wreath. Going to be one of those wreaths that is quick, easy, and fun to make. We're starting with this Santa Hat wreath form, and it's quite a large wreath form, and I got this one at the Dollar Tree. Next, I have some red deco mesh. For this type of wreath, I also like to use up that deco mesh that's a little bit loose, and you know it's not the best quality. Next, I have a little foam ball. I got this one at the Dollar Tree, and then a scarf. The last thing you will need besides hot glue is some zip ties, chenille stems, or floral wire. When attaching my deco mesh to my wreath forms, I usually like to do the number 8, where I'm kind of weaving it in and out to each side, and that way it's just nice and solid. You know it's nice and secure. This time I'm not going to do that because of this. As you can see, this wreath form has bars that are making the shape of the hat, so when you start weaving, this is going to show up. What I decided to do is just wrap, and we're just going to solidly wrap it around. If you need to, you can hot glue the actual deco mesh to itself or to the bars as we're moving along. I'm going to be zip tying them as much as I can here and there to secure it in place. And on top of that, it's an easier technique. Grab a little zip tie, and I'm going to tie it right here. I wanted to show you where I connected it. It's at the crossing right here, and it's not going to go anywhere as we're bringing our deco mesh down. And I'm just wrapping it just like it is. Don't make it too loose. You want to make sure that all those edges, the actual wreath form, is not showing up. As you can see, as I'm coming around, if I need to twist it, I twist it, because obviously it's not just going to go nicely, especially over here where you have just narrowing going in and out. So just twist it as you need to, kind of seal that in. I have my ending right here, and I think if I didn't have this deco mesh that's in such poor shape, I would have finished this first section right here. My second roll of deco mesh isn't that great either, but the rest of my deco mesh is nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap my deco mesh as you see right here. Just overlap it one on top of another, and then I'm going to attach it on this bar right here. Grab a zip tie them together. No need to cut the excess because we want as much of that redness as possible. So I'm just going to continue going around. Now I'm just going to grab the last of the deco mesh in my second roll and grab the deco mesh from my third roll, zip tie it right here, and then off I go, going around and around. I'm on my 5th roll and I'm about halfway done. I think it'll take you 4 to 5 rolls, just depending on the quality of the deco mesh you are using. And then I'm going to grab my tail, and I'm going to go inside the little hat and grab a piece of deco mesh, grab it like this, and then I'm going to zip tie one to the other. And this way we can kind of hide the tail inside the hat. All done when it comes to the red part of the hat. To cover this part right here, I'm going to use the scarf. And the first thing I'm going to do is find the seams of the scarf. It's really easy to take it apart once you kind of start the seam going. After I got the seam, I'm going to take about 1 inch from the beginning, go to the beginning of the hat and measure to the end of the hat. Make sure you put it on the part that's going up, and then grab another inch or 2. It's always good to be safe rather than sorry when it comes to this. Here is the fuzzy part of our hat. I'm going to flip it upside down and cut down the middle. Here I cut into the actual fur. I'm going to show you how to repair that. Don't hot glue it onto each other. That might be noticeable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip a little bit of fabric from the side. bring this little cut together and then put hot glue on both sides of it and then kind of use the fabric to bring the seam together. Here it is repaired. You can't even tell where the seam was. Now I'm just going to lay my fur right over the hat and I'm going to push it in right here in the center. The first thing you want to do is just bring this center together. Make sure you have the fur on this side and fur on the other side. And then I'm going to cut it into right here. You can bring this end in and right here. When I'm hot gluing, I'm making sure that I'm hot gluing only the back sides together, not touching the actual fuzzy fur. And I'm making little stripes here. And of course the ends we're just bringing together. And then at the end we're going to bring the sides in. Now I'm taking the little piece of the scarf that was left plus my little foam ball and I'm going to cut the foam ball in half. The little step with doing the foam ball is not necessary, but I wanted the little dome on the actual top to be there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it and then just do some hot glue on the ends right here. And now I'm going to make sure it's hot glued all the way to the edges, that it's nice and solid. To go in between this space, I know that I need about an inch. I'm going to cut about an inch so I can pull this through. And now the rest of it, I know that this sphere doesn't go all the way out, but that's okay. I'm just going to start hot gluing all of this fabric to the back, starting with the edges. And then I'm just going to continue opening it up and adding hot glue until it comes to a point where I can just cut off the excess. The last and final step here is to jazz up our little hat. I decided to grab this pick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pine cone out. I'm going to grab the tail and fold it in half. Next, I'm grabbing a Farmhouse Poinsettia, and this one I got for $1.48 at Walmart last year. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it right here. Just find a spot. I clamped it on one of my little branches, but you can definitely hot glue it, whatever works for you. Next, I grabbed the zip tie and put it through the thickest or the most secure part of my pick, and I'm going to find where I want to place it. And because I need to go through this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some tweezers, go through the back, and these are sharp tweezers. You can use scissors, whatever you have on hand, and I fed it through the hole that I just made. I'm just going to zip tie it. It's going to stay in place. Open it up the way you want it, and that's it for my Santa Hat wreath. To hang the Santa wreath, I'm grabbing a floral wire and I'm just grabbing a big chunk of the deco mesh in the back. And of course, I grabbed it where I have the thickest part where I know it's not going to affect the look in the front. I'm going to twist it, loop it, and then just loop it around. And you have a great way to hang it. This wreath is not heavy. It's a very light wreath, so it should hold it in place. For this wreath, I will be using this medium-sized wood blend wreath from the Dollar Tree. And all I'm doing is I'm grabbing some white chalk paint. You can use acrylic if that's all you have on hand. And I'm just going to give it one coat. This is just to brighten up the wreath. Once the wreath has dried, I'm going to grab this frosted fern from the Dollar Tree, and I absolutely love this. I get it every year, and every project you make, it makes it look very frosted, very wintry, very elegant, and beautiful. My centerpiece is going to be to the middle left, kind of like at 9 o'clock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start with the longer leaves, and I ended up using 3 of the longer branches on top and 3 of the longer branches on the bottom. And then with the little branches, I filled those in wherever there were spots that they would fit in. I ended up using up 2 bushels of the frosted fern. For my statement piece, I'm going to use this reindeer ornament from the Dollar Tree, and all I did was hot glue it in place and just held it down for a little bit, and then I gave it a little bit more of the hot glue from the back of the wreath. I felt like it was missing something, so what I did was I grabbed this little bushel of cotton and pine cones from the Dollar Tree, and I cut off these white berries and just hot glued two on top and two at the bottom, and I felt like it balanced everything out and brought more of the white from the wreath into the decor on top. And that is all that I did for this simple winter wreath. To hang the wreath, I'm just attaching a 1/4 inch white ribbon to the top of the wreath and tying it in place. For this wreath, I'm going to be using the 9.8-inch foam wreath from the Dollar Tree and also 1.5 of this 15-foot garland that I also got at the Dollar Tree. To attach the garland to the wreath, I just looped it, twisted it in place, and just started wrapping my garland around the foam wreath. To keep the garland in place, I added some hot glue and grabbed another pack. And this is what was left from the second pack of the garland. Now I'm grabbing this ribbon that I got on clearance at Joann Fabric, and I'm going to make a simple shabby chic long tail bow, and I'm going to bring it together with a piece of wire. Just make sure it's long enough for you to wrap it around and just twist it in place. Next, I'm grabbing this Dollar Tree decorative filler, and all I'm doing here is grabbing little pine cones, and I'm picking out the ones that have just a little bit more white so they stand out, and I'm just going to hot glue them all throughout the wreath. For the center of the bow, I grabbed a sweet little pine cone and just hot glued it to the center. This filler also had these sweet little berries, so I decided to unwrap them and just twisted them with the leftover wire from the bow. Just twisted them behind the bow and left them on top. And I feel like it added such a sweet little touch. When I was done with the wreath, I felt like some of the pine cones needed just a little bit more white to stand out against the green background. So I'm just grabbing some chalk paint and a little paintbrush, and I'm just going to dab some of the pine cones with the white paint, just a little bit. For this wreath, I'm starting with the 9.8 foam wreath form from the Dollar Tree. And also in the party section of the Dollar Tree, you can find this metallic party streamer. And this is so perfect for any glam DIY or wreath. To attach my streamer to the wreath, I'm just going to lay it on a little bit of an angle, and keeping it a little bit taut, I'm going to wrap it around my wreath form, hot gluing it in place as needed. Now I'm grabbing some of these silver glitter branches, and these are from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to put two on each side, one a little further from the center and one a little closer. Next, I'm grabbing some gold floral wire that I got also at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to secure the branches in place. On top of the branches, I'm going to add some berries. And the reason I'm doing this is because these berries are very silver and they stand out very well against the gold background. And I'm just going to hot glue one bundle on the left and one bundle on the right, leaving a little space in between. For the center, I'm going to grab 3 of these poinsettia flowers, and I'm just going to hot glue them in place, making sure that the center one stands out in the middle. For this wreath, I'm starting off with a 9.8-inch foam wreath form from the Dollar Tree and also 2 rolls of this yarn. The yarn we're going to be wrapping around the wreath form is going to be this beautiful light sage green. And the first thing I'm going to do is just tie it in place. If you feel more comfortable, you can just dab a little bit of hot glue to keep it in place. And then I'm going to start wrapping it around, and I'm going to be wrapping it around in a smooth manner. For this wreath, because we're going for that yarn look, you can definitely do it kind of in a sloppy way, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. Just make sure that you cover all of that foam wreath. For this next part, I'm going to grab a few of these 2-inch spheres and then 1.4-inch spheres. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to start wrapping these to make it look like balls of yarn, and I'm going to do a few of the sage ones and also a few of the white ones. It's up to you how many you want of each color. Because the whole wreath is more of a sage, I decided to do more of the white than the sage colors. And for the maximum cuteness effect of this wreath, I'm going to grab some wooden beads, and these are 16 millimeters. And I'm also going to wrap some yarn around these so they look like small little balls of yarn. And now you can hot glue the yarn in any way you want, whether you want it on the left, on the right, maybe only at the bottom or only on top. That is up to you. As long as you secure the actual spheres in the back versus the front so that the hot glue doesn't show in the final product. And of course, I highly recommend start by adding the big spheres, then the medium, and finish off with the small ones. To make the bow, I'm grabbing a sage green and white grosgrain ribbon, and I'm just going to do 2 simple bows, layer them, and hot glue them to the top of the wreath. I started with the white bow because my wreath is sage, and then made my sage green bow just a little bit smaller, hot glued it to the top of my white one. Then grabbing some white yarn, I wrapped it around the center and hot glued it in the back. And then I'm hot gluing my beautiful bow to the top of my wreath. To hang the wreath, I'm just going to grab some sage yarn, wrap it around my wreath, and hang my wreath. I'm going to start this wreath using this 14-inch metal wreath form from the Dollar Tree, and also 3 packs of the 9 feet Dollar Tree garland. And the cool thing about this silver garland is it has a wire going through the center of it. So as you can see in the beginning, I'm just zigzagging it back and forth just twice between the layers of the wreath and just twisting the end in place. And then the remaining garland, I'm just wrapping around my wreath. Each garland will be enough for 2 sections of this wreath form, and since we have 6 sections, you will need all 3 garlands. When I'm done wrapping it around, I'm just going to do the same thing at the end, zigzag it back and forth, and it will stay in place because of the wire that's in the garland. And here is my wreath covered in garland all the way around. And now I'm grabbing 3 of these Christmas trees that I got from the Dollar Tree. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hot glue them to the back of the wreath. So make sure to flip your wreath at this point. Grabbing my first Christmas tree, I'm going to bend the base over and hot glue it in place. And then for my second and third Christmas tree that are going to go on the sides of that center one, I'm going to bend it down on the base of the tree and then back up, making a little bit of a wire loop. But this will also shorten the tree and will give us that little forest effect. After my base is in place and hot glued, it's time to start hot gluing the Christmas trees to our wreath form. The first one is going to be in the center, and I just spread some of my tinsel around to fit it in. And the second and third are going to go on the left and the right next to it. And as you can see, they are a little lower because of the loop that we made with the wire. Next, I'm grabbing some chenille wires or pipe cleaners, and these are just silver pipe cleaners from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to give it a little bit of support from the back. I also made sure that 3 of my Christmas trees were in one section. That way, when I'm putting the chenille wire on, I'm attaching my pipe cleaners where the sections begin and end, and that way the pipe cleaners are in place and so are the Christmas trees. And that is it for this beautiful and super simple wreath. I have some greenery. This is from Walmart. Whatever greenery that kind of matches with the greenery of the actual wreath would work really nicely. Then I have some Hobby Lobby ribbon that's buffalo check, and this one is 1 inch in width. This 18-inch wreath form. First things first, let's remove our tag, and we are going to open up all our branches, and I'm going to move all my branches up so that bottom part, this can be nice and flat. If there's anything like this that's sharp, just bend it over. Now that my wreath is open, I'm going to grab my greenery, and as you can see, it has this space right here between this little branch and this bundle right here, and that's where I'm going to attach it. So I'm just going to grab one of the branches and loop it around. And if you want, you can definitely lay it out to make sure that whatever greenery you're using is going to be enough. Our wreath is nice and full. Now I'm going to grab my ribbon and I'm going to cut it into 8-inch strips. As you see, I'm zigzagging the ribbon, and that is because when I cut my strips, I'm going to cut dovetails at the same time. I have 12 8-inch strips. All I'm doing here is folding each of the endings together and cutting a little triangle, making sure to cut all the ends. Now that we're done, I'm just going to grab 2 pieces of ribbon at a time, and that's going to be kind of like our bundles. And I'm going to grab these garland ties, but you can definitely use floral wire or some pipe cleaners cut in half. So I'm just going to grab one, cut it in half, and that is how we're going to tie this to the actual wreath form. We have 12 pieces of ribbon with 2 each. That's going to give us 6 bundles. To the actual main wire here, I'm going to twist and bring these 2 greenery pieces to the front, and that's going to fill that area in a little bit, and it's going to give us this sweet little ribbon bundle. Next 2, and I'm going to attach it to the opposite side, give it a good twist, and bring the greenery to the front. Now that we have our wreath kind of separated in half, since we have 6 bundles, I'm going to do 2 here and 2 here. Now I'm going to grab some ornaments. This is a 12-piece set from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take all the white ones, remove the little tops, and I'm going to hot glue them straight to the centers of all my bundles. This wreath was super simple. All we did was just add some greenery, cut up some ribbon, made quick little bundles, not bad, and then put an ornament in the center. I think it turned out absolutely beautiful. For this fun and easy wreath, I'm starting with some tinsel, some beautiful leaves, and this 10-inch wreath form. All 3 of these are from the Dollar Tree. And then I have some really pretty ribbon from Joann's, and it's just this beautiful dark blue with silver snowflakes. And then you're going to need a little bit of floral wire. Starting with a piece of floral wire, I'm going to attach my tinsel to the wreath form. 2 twists, and then wrap the floral wire around our wreath form. Now we're just going to wrap the tinsel all the way around the wreath. The tinsel from the Dollar Tree does come with a wire on the inside, so I'm just going to use the wire and twist together the next tinsel. And now I just continue going around and around. The ending I'm also tying in with some floral wire, and I'm just hiding the wire in between the tinsel. Now let's bring the blue in. I'm just going to put it against the wreath and put the wreath to the side. Going to make a 6-loop bow, but I'm just going to play it by ear and just start looping just around and towards the back, around and towards the center. Let's clip this in place while I get some floral wire. I'm just going to find the center. And this is another way to check, make sure all my loops are the same. Just make sure everything's nice and even. A few twists in the back. Bend the tails back so it lays down nicely and it has something to hold on to. I'm going to take my bow and I'm going to wrap it right in the center. Now I'm getting some blue floral wire. This one is 26 gauge, also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to secure my leaves in place. If you can't find wires that match whatever color you're using, you can just hot glue the leaves on. I had a lot of you asking me actually to do wreaths where you don't need the hot glue gun, and that's why I've been trying to show you these easy wreaths where you really don't need one. You can get away with using zip ties or some floral wire. The way I attached my leaves is the area where the top leaves are covering, and that's a nice branch. That's where I connect it because it's connected right there and you have other branches covering it. So even if you don't have floral wire that's matching color, you can still get away with using what you have on hand. I'm going to cut my tails. Grabbing one of these vase fillers from the Dollar Tree and put in the center. It's going to match our ribbon and it's going to bring out the tinsel. I think it's going to just balance everything out. If I was doing this and I was not able to use a hot glue gun, I would take my little snowflake and then grab a floral wire, wrap it around the snowflake and attach it to the center. This is going to be so lovely. Get started on our wreath, we are going to need some florals, beautiful scarf, and of course a large wreath form. This one is going to be 18 inches and it's a willow wreath. I got this one at the Dollar Tree. If you can't get a hold of a willow wreath form that's 18 inches or maybe a grapevine wreath form, you can definitely grab a metal wreath form that's 18 inches from the Dollar Tree. Cover it in some white fabric or whatever fabric is going to match your scarf and go from there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint my wreath form with some chalk Rust-Oleum paint in linen white. If you have a wreath form that's going to match your scarf a little better, you can definitely leave it as is. But because my scarf is gray and white, this is a warm color, it's not going to match nicely. And I'm just grabbing a shabby brush, going to go all around and paint this wreath form. Now that our wreath form is dry, I'm going to bring in the scarf. The scarf is 59 inches, and that's why you want an 18-inch frame, because you want that to look nice. The first thing we want to do with the scarf is find our center. In the center, I'm going to grab a piece of floral wire and just tie it. That way I know that's my center. Then I'm just going to lay out the scarf nice and flat, and then I'm going to put my palm right here on one side and just kind of cover it with the scarf. That's my first loop. Then I'm going to find my center, put my palm right there, and there you go. That's the other one. Starting from the bottom, I'm bringing it in. We're going to take the remaining wire that we found the center with and just wrap him around the bow. That's it. you have your bow. Now I'm going to grab 2 of these holly bouquets from the Dollar Tree. And the first thing I'm going to do is pull all the greenery up. We're going to put the greenery to the side of our bow. We're just going to measure how much we're going to need. Now I'm going to bend the ends together. Let's see if I like that, and I do. I'm going to bring this together with the floral wire first. Now I put a zip tie through my wreath, putting my greenery, our little scarf bow, and bringing it together. The zip tie is what is really going to hold everything in place. For the center of my bow, I'm going to be using this ornament from the Dollar Tree. It is a 3D snowflake. I'm just going to put the hot glue right here and anywhere it's touching the actual scarf. There is a little loop to hang the ornament, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little snippers here and just snip that off. And now you can't even tell where it was. And then I'll add a little bit of hot glue on the back when this one cools so I can see what's needed. At the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take where I have my little ruffles, I'm going to take the third one from the center and very lightly, don't pull it too taut, kind of lightly hot glue it, just like that. Just a little dot of hot glue, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. That way when the wreath is hanging, you can take these others and just cover that part, and it's going to look like it's just naturally hanging. I think this wreath turned out very simple, very elegant, and super easy. This beautiful wreath, I'm going to be using some of this looped yarn. I got it on clearance at Joann's. Next, I have some mini ornaments from the Dollar Tree along with this ornament, which is so pretty. And of course, a 10-inch wreath form. If you have a white wreath form, you could go ahead and start attaching the yarn. For me, I'm going to cover it with some fabric. I'm just going to cut strips about 1.5 inches and just hot glue it around. Now that the wreath is covered, I'm going to start attaching my yarn, and I hot glued it in place. You can use a pin and just pin it through some floral wire, zip ties, anything you have on hand. And with a white background, you're not as nervous, keeping everything really tight, and you know this one roll is going to be more than enough. I'm going to continue wrapping the yarn around our wreath, and then we're going to decorate. Next, I'm going to grab the wings. I'm going to take this gold string out because I want this to kind of melt into the actual wreath. And I'm going to put through just a thin white one. When I have my wings where I want them, I'm just going to knot the little ribbon in place in the back. Then I'm going to take the ribbon and I'm going to make a little knot, making sure that it's not going to be higher than the actual wreath, just enough so we can hang it. Now that that's taken care of, the little string disappeared. Now I'm going to grab the ornaments and I'm going to remove this plastic part so that I can just put the hot glue straight on the ornament and attach the ornament somewhere on the wreath. And I'm going to spread them out throughout. Now I'm just going to start hot gluing the gold ones in, and same thing, we're just going to kind of spread them throughout the wreath. This wreath is super simple and affordable. I'm going to start with an 8-inch wreath form. You get a pack of 2 at the Dollar Tree. As far as the ribbon, you want something that's 1/2 inch or less in width. For the bow on top, I'm going to be using some of this leftover gold ribbon that I have, and it's 1.5 inches in width. To get started, you want to unravel your ribbon roll. I'm going to go in between just like this so we can secure it in place, and I'm going to do that in the back. Now I'm going to weave it. I'm going to go up and down, around, up, down, around, up, down, around. And I'm going to show you exactly what I'm doing. Just like this, and I'm going to go all the way around. I came to the end of the first section, and here I'm just going to do the same thing, over, under, and around, just like that. And there you go, it's hidden. And then I'm going to continue doing the same thing. And then you're going to have this pattern that kind of looks like little bows. I think it turns out so pretty. I'm done with my first ribbon roll, and this is only 3 yards. And it lasted for that long. Now I'm just putting some hot glue on my next roll, hot gluing the 2 ends together. And I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing, going back and forth, over and under. I'm at the very end. I went all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on the end here. And I'm just going to hot glue a little loop. This is what my wreath is going to hang on. I have my leftover ribbon, and as you can see, you can really see the creases in the ribbon itself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my flat iron. Depending on the type of ribbon you use, put it on low or medium. You can always put it up if you want. But I'm just going to run the ribbon through a few times. And now we have a smooth ribbon to make our bow. I'm going to make a simple bow. Let's see how big I want my bow to be. I made my simple bow, and I think I want to put this red ribbon right over. But I'm going to flip it to the dull side so the little snowflakes are only peeking through the inside. Bring it together with a piece of floral wire right in the center. Hot gluing my bow onto my wreath. For this wreath, I'm just going to use some of this buffalo check tinsel garland. I'm going to be using this very soft ribbon. I got it at Michael's. This is 2.5 inches in width, but you can use one that's velvet, one from the Dollar Tree. It really doesn't matter as long as you take a nice solid red ribbon. And of course, a foam wreath form. This one is 9.8 inches in diameter. Grabbing my floral wire, I'm just going to wrap it around the wreath real quick. Add my little tail, twist it in place, wrap it around, and then just start wrapping my tinsel. Grabbing an ending of one side and this next piece of tinsel, I'm just going to bring it together by a piece of wire. And of course, I'm going to continue wrapping it all the way around. Grabbing another piece of wire, I just wrapped it around my green wreath form. Then I have my tail right here. I'm going to work it in and tie it off. You can also hot glue it if that's what you want to do. But I decided to do this and then just hide the little wire. And there you go, the wreath base is all set. For the ribbon, I decided to do a Christmas bow. I'm going to first measure my tail and cut that piece off. Next, I'm going to measure how big I want my bow to be. I think that will look good. And I'm going to cut 2 even pieces. I'm going to first take my tail, fold it in half, and put it to the side. Then I'm going to take the next 2 strips, and I'm going to make little kind of circles. And when I overlap them, I'm going to overlap no more than 1 inch. And I'm really just going to do a dot of hot glue. That's it. I don't want too much hot glue because when we're going to be bringing them together, I want this to be very pliable. I'm going to do the same thing with this second piece. Bit of hot glue and bring it together. Now we're going to find our center, bring it together, and I'm just going to lay it straight. I'm going to find the center, bring it together, and then I'm going to lay it straight. Then I'm going to take the tail and I'm going to squeeze it in the center, making a little upside down V, and put it here. Now let's grab a little floral wire and let's bring the bow together. Starting with my back loops, I'm going to fold them in towards the center and then fold out. I'm going to hold it there. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to fold it in, and then these sides, we're going to fold out, and then we're going to bring them together. The tail that we did, we're just going to add that to the bottom. And so you have a bow like this. This is called a Christmas bow. Then I'm going to take my wire or a zip tie or whatever you have on hand, bring that together. I'm going to do 2 twists, and then I'm going to grab another piece of fabric, fold it over, and bring it back just like that. Look how pretty this is. And hot glue it in the back. I know you want to put some black and white right here in the center. I do too. But I wanted to keep this to a traditional Christmas bow. So I'm making it the way that it's supposed to be made. But with all I have in me, I really want to put some maybe buffalo check or something right in the center. And now I'm just going to take my wires and wrap them around my wreath form. But just look at this beautiful bow and the contrast between the red and the black and white. So, so pretty. And of course, one last step, we are going to make dovetails. We're basically done at this point, but if you want to do one more step, I like to do banner tails. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tail and I'm going to go down about 2/3, fold it back and fold it over just like that. I'm going to do that a little slower. I'm going to measure where I need to bend so both sides are the same. So I'm going to fold it over. As you see, I'm folding it in. Then I'm going to take my pointer fingers and my thumbs, pinch the ribbon on both sides, and just twist it in. And this is what you're going to have on the side. And it just gives this beautiful dimension and a little bit more character to the bow. For this wreath, I'm going to be using an ornament from the Dollar Tree, then some picks I got at Joann's, ribbon from Hobby Lobby, wire from Michael's, and this new wreath form from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by grabbing my ornament. This wreath comes together with 2 hooks right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little ornament straight through the hook, and then I'm going to grab pliers and just tighten that up. And that's all taken care of. Next, the greenery. Open it up and fluff it out. And then of course, where we have this part, we're going to bend. Going to do the same thing on this side. Overlap them where they are bent and start attaching them with the wire. Now I'm going to grab a longer piece of wire, and then grabbing my buffalo check, I'm going to make a little bow. I want to make a 4-loop bow. I'm going to squeeze it in the middle, grab our white floral wire, 2 twists, then I'm going to twist it around my greenery, just like that. A few twists here, and then I'm just going to add it straight to that center. And now I'm going to start twisting around. I also decided to grab a zip tie and just give it a quick zip just to make sure everything stays in place. A zip tie is just a great lock. Opening up my little bows. Going to cut the little tails on an angle. For the final touch, I'm going to grab a pom-pom from the Dollar Tree, and this one is going to match the little fur on our skate. Hot glue and straight to the center. And this wreath is all done. To hang this wreath, I'm just going to use a little bit of jute cord, tie it at the end, and send the knot to the back. For this wreath, I'm starting with 2 packs of Garland, a 14-inch wreath form from the Dollar Tree. The little gnome is going to sit inside here. And the last thing is a little bit of floral wire. And I'm just going to use it to tie the garland to the wreath form. I'm just going to go on an intersection, grab a piece of that garland, and tie it off. This part is super easy. One of our garlands needs to last us 3 sections. Grabbing another piece of wire, I'm going to go on the intersection here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 twists. Then I'm going to grab one tail. I just clipped it so I can find it. Then I'm going to put it in between the wire, hide that off. And then I'm grabbing the next one, putting that right in the wire. A few more twists. That's nice and secured. And now we continue wrapping the tinsel. Make sure you're wrapping it nice and tight so you have enough. And if you feel like you don't have enough, you might want to do another one. But this tinsel should be more or less forgiving because of all the little gnomes. And all these gnomes that are in the back, we can definitely just push them through. And when you push them through, they're going to fill in those spaces if there's any. Mine seems to be nice and filled. Another piece of wire, grabbing my last piece and just tying it and securing it in place. All my gnomes are in the front of the wreath, and now I'm going to grab my main star, which is this little gnome. And the first thing I'm going to do is brush his hair. I mean, really, who needs matted hair even in a gnome? Now that his hair is nice and brushed, we're going to start attaching him. I'm going to be using stronger wire. This is 20 gauge floral wire. You can get this in any craft store. The reason I'm using this stiffer gauge wire is I want to go through the gnome. I'm going to go through like this. So we're going to go from the back towards the front, but don't come out too front. The weight is down here, so you'll feel your wire going through some of these pebbles. Then I'm going to sit my gnome down, and here I'm going to go in between. That's going to get covered by all that tinsel. Go around. We're going to tie it in the back. Nice and tight. Let's cut the excess off. And then here, we're going to feel where we want to attach. And then you're going to get this stiffer wire, this 20 gauge floral wire, and you're going to go through the hat. And of course, the hat is going to be in the front. And then you're going to go through the wreath, twist it in the back, and hide that wire after it's nice and secured. And that is it for this super cute and easy gnome wreath. I'm going to be using some silver tinsel, these 2 picks. This wreath formed 9.8 inches. All of this is from the Dollar Tree. And this beautiful Glam Farmhouse Poinsettia that was $1.48 at Walmart. To attach my tinsel garland, I'm going to be using a piece of floral wire, and I'm just going to wrap it around and tie it. You can also hot glue this if you want, but I'm going to use the wire, and off I go, wrapping it around and around. I'm going to grab the tail of the first one and then the beginning of the second one, tie them together, overlap them just a little bit, and secure in place. Now I have my end. I'm going to twist it. And by the way, this Dollar Tree tinsel does have a wire ending. So what I like to do when I tie it off with my wire, I take this ending and just twist it. That way I know it's going to be nice and secure. And I'm actually going to just do a few more twists and keep it where it is because I'm going to attach the greenery here. As I'm laying my greenery out, I decided to take my pine cones out. And here's the easiest way to do it. They're being held by a wire, so I'm just going to untwist and I'm going to wiggle my pine cone out. You don't have to rip anything. This extra wire, we're just going to use it when we're bringing the 2 picks together. Same thing on this side. We're just going to untwist and wiggle the pine cone out. And now we're going to make room for the flower. I played around until I felt comfortable where I want everything to be. Now that I know, I'm going to remove my little flower, bring the 2 picks together, attach them with the wires we have left over from the pine cones first, and we're already steady. And then on this wire, I'm going to use my little clip and I'm just going to clip my flower right in. Then adjust it a little bit here, a little bit there where I want everything to be. Now I'm going to put my bundle right on top of my wreath and secure with the wires I had left over. And if you need extra, you can definitely just secured with as many as you would like. For this wreath, you're going to need one of those old-fashioned metal hangers where you can take it apart right here on the neck, and you're going to need 2 to 3 colors of ornaments. I'm going to use gold, red, and a few of these white ones to brighten things up. The first thing I'm going to do is undo the neck area, rounding the hanger out, and now I'm going to just start feeding my ornaments through. Here's what I have so far, and I'm just going to continue doing this. This is so much fun, and I love that you can do this with your grandkids or your kids, and this is just one of these DIYs that is fun for the whole family. I love this. All my ornaments are on, and a quick reminder, if you are going to use Dollar Tree ornaments, make sure to hot glue the ornament to the actual hanging part. My wreath is going to be a little smaller, so I'm just going to take this wire and bend it at my connection. Now you're just going to hold it and wiggle it down. This hanger is pretty large. It makes a big wreath, but I wanted mine just a little bit smaller, so I just twisted the top over here until I had all my endings secured so nothing's being scratched. I can hang the wreath by this hook right here, and we're going to add a bow. We have, of course, the supervisor that came to make sure my wreath is doing all well. In order to make this wreath a 5-minute wreath, you can definitely use one of these bows and just put that on top, and your wreath is all done. To make my bow for the top of the wreath, I'm going to grab this white one. It has little stockings on it, and we're going to make a big poofy bow that's going to cover up this ugly hook. I'm going to have no tail on this bow, so I'm just going to keep a short one about 2 inches right here, and off we go making loops about 5 inches. And then every time I go around, I'm going to twist because this is a one-sided ribbon. Going to make an 8-loop bow. I think that's going to be sufficient to cover all of that up. So I made 4 loops on each side, and then I'm going to take about 2 inches and cut the ribbon off. I'm going to grab a zip tie to bring this bow together. Cut that off. Grab a piece of white floral wire. Go around. Do a few twists in the back. And then I'm going to attach it to the center. That's nice and secured in the back. And of course, now my favorite part, and that's opening up the bow. To get started on the hat. All right, now that I removed everything extra from the hat, I'm going to grab a scarf. This is one of these long scarves from the Dollar Tree. And then I'm going to use this faux fur muffler, also from the Dollar Tree. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these apart. I took all the scarves apart, and this one does have a backing on it. I usually just save it for covering DIYs, you know, the back when it's like ugly. We're going to start with the red, and all I'm doing is just putting it over. Come as close as you want to the edge right here, and then hot glue it in the back. I kept all the garland because it just gives it a good cushion, and we're using the same color as the color in the back, so it really doesn't matter. Now we're going to do the bottom of the hat. And what I'm going to do is just start with a little bit of hot glue And I'm going to actually put the fluff side down right here. The reason I want to do that is when you're going to turn it over, it's going to give it like that poof right there on top, and it's going to look really natural and beautiful. At the bottom, it's not that necessary, so at the bottom, we're just going to turn it over and hot glue it on the other side. Just kind of keep it loose. Don't pull it too tight. And now just hot glue the sides in place. On top of the hat, I'm going to grab the pom-pom that was on the end of the red scarf. Give it a generous amount of hot glue. And just stick it to the top right there. For an easy way to decorate the hat, you could just hot glue a pick, something like this. Or maybe one of these picks and just hot glue it in place. To decorate this, I'm going to grab some branches that I have on hand, and these are just vintage branches from an old tree that my mom took apart a long time ago, and I just painted it white for a previous project a while ago. And I'm just going to be using these. For a similar version, you can definitely use these from the Dollar Tree. These are so cool because they have that plasticky look, and when you put paint over them, that's kind of what they're gonna look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some branches coming here, and then I'm going to do the centerpiece right there. Dollar Tree has so many beautiful poinsettias, and I think this one would look so pretty right there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this bottom off. I cut the little thing off, but when you do that, make sure you go right there and hot glue the actual flower to the greenery. And I'm gonna do that on both sides. And there you go. To hang it, I'm just going to grab a piece of jute cord and tie it off in the back right here. To get started on our stocking, I'm going to take all of this stuff off. We're only removing the red part of our stocking because we're going to put burlap on here, so we need to brighten this area up. But here we're just gonna keep the white because what we're doing is we're covering this with white. Next, I'm going to go around and get rid of these little things that are sticking out. Now that our stocking is nice and clean, I'm going to put 2 layers of this quilt filling, and I'm just going to hot glue it to the back here. Now it's time to add my burlap. You can use whatever burlap you have on hand. I'm just going to use this burlap sack right here, and I'm going to hot glue it first kind of in place and then cut it because otherwise it's going to fall apart. And I'm going to do 2 layers because the padding of the stocking is going to show through if you don't do 2 layers. And I'm cutting about 1 inch all the way around. Now I'm grabbing a piece of this Dollar Tree infinity scarf, and I'm going to put it right here. And at the bottom, I always like to hot glue with the fur down so it's a smooth look. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? On the edge right there. And I'm just going to hot glue it in place in the back. To decorate our stocking, I'm going to grab some of this Dollar Tree frosted fern. And what I want is I want a few of these kind of hanging down. We're going to put them in different heights too. The middle one I want to be the longest. This one a little shorter and this one a little shorter. And as you can see, I have a little sidekick over here supervising me, making sure I'm doing everything correctly. Thank you, Leo. Where would I be without you? All right, just very simple. I'm not doing anything extravagant here. And then I'm going to fill in with these. Going to cut some of these down, and these are going to face up. I want it to cascade really nicely here, and I'll come back to these if I have to. But in the center, I'm going to put some pine cones. Now, these I bought like this. They are just basically painted on the edges with a little bit of white paint. This is perfect as it is. Just add a little bit right here to fill it in. But I do have to incorporate some red in my project. So I'm going to grab some of these berries, and I'm just going to throw in a few of them. To get started on the candy cane, the first thing I'm going to do is basically remove everything on it, including this bow. And now I'm going to go around the edges and just using my wire cutter, get all of those little things that are sticking out and get rid of them. All right, now I have my candy cane nice and smooth on the edges. I'm grabbing this shop towel. This is from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to use these towels to cover my candy cane. I'm just gonna cut it in half. This is going to be the background, so no need to be very careful with it and whatnot. I'm going to fold the towel in two and start wrapping it around my wreath. I used up 2 towels for the candy cane, and you have 3 left over to wash the floors or something. Now I'm grabbing this 2.5-inch ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to start rolling it around our candy cane. But first, I'm going to kind of leave a little bit on here so that I can tuck it in later. Try to keep these kind of on the even side. Okay, now that our candy cane has all that red, I'm grabbing some grosgrain ribbon and I'm going to wrap it around all of these lines so they're not even going to be shown. I do try to use the hot glue in the back as much as I can. To decorate our candy cane, I'm grabbing the 1.5-inch grosgrain ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to do a layered bow, and I'm hoping we're going to just have a cute little decor. Right there, made a simple bow, that I hot glue. Then I'm going to grab this ribbon. This was also from the Dollar Tree. We don't want to make it too small or too big. Just hot gluing it right on top, grabbing another piece of the red ribbon. It's going to get covered up, otherwise if you were to do just a ribbon without a centerpiece, I would use a white ribbon for this part. With grosgrain ribbon, you kind of have to control the tails, and you know, here you could see that we want them to actually go down just a little bit because they're sticking out to the sides just a little too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the back of one of my tails, right there in the corner, just give it a little bit of hot glue, and then you're going to push it down and hot glue that in place. And as you can see, the one I glued down is going down and this one is going to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing in the back of it, dollop of hot glue and push it down. Next, I'm going to grab these foam scatters, and I'm going to grab one white snowflake, and I'm going to hot glue it in the middle. Last, I'm just going to cut the tails on an angle. To get started on this little ornament, the first thing I'm going to do is just start removing everything. And the easiest way to do it is, well, it's best to find the beginning of it. But then on the sides here, all you have to do is really just kind of pull it on the sides because they're being held by these little tabs. Now it's time to cover this ornament. I'm going to be using the loft batting. This is basically the stuff they use to make quilts. If you don't have something like this on hand, just use any fleece fabric or Dollar Tree blankets or scarves, and you can get the same effect. Before I get going, I'm going to use some wire cutters and get rid of all these little pegs that held the little garland in place. I got 2 layers of the padding here, and I just cut a square out, and I'm going to put my little topper at the top, and of course we're going to turn this upside down so it kind of stands like a plate, and I'm just going to start hot gluing starting from the top. After I got my 4 corners, I'm just going to bring in all the sides. Next, I got some tulle, and I'm going to fold it into 4, so there's 4 layers on top of my little ornament. And I usually get these on clearance at Joann Fabric or sometimes at Walmart. So just look out for those in the clearance sections. You can find some really pretty ones. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have my little corner so that my topper is covered with one of the corners. And then we are just going to flip this and just hot glue it in the back. All right, my ornament is all covered, and now I'm going to grab my favorite greenery from the Dollar Tree, and this is this fern that's covered in white, and it has a little sparkle to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the vines. And I'm starting by hot gluing these long ones, and I'm kind of pointing towards the center. Here we're going to have a bow that's going to cascade. So it's going to cover all those tips. Now I got my little branches, and I'm going to hot glue those in place. Now for the bow, I'm going to be using this 1.5 inch grosgrain ribbon from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to make just a sweet little simple bow. Dab a little hot glue. Then I'm grabbing a red grosgrain ribbon. And this one is also from the Dollar Tree and 5/8 inch. Making a smaller bow to put right on top. Now I'm going to overlap the smaller one over the bigger one. We're going to fold in, fold out, so it like stands out really nicely. Here you can grab a floral wire, or I'm just going to grab a piece of a pipe cleaner just to bring it together. Next, I'm just grabbing some white grosgrain ribbon, and this is the 5/8 inch, and I'm just going to use it for the middle here. Now I'm just cutting the corners here. You can also cinch the edges if you like. I decided not to. And we're going to hot glue it in place. I feel like we need some more greenery here. To hang this ornament, I'm just looping a piece of jute cord and tying it off in the back. This is going to be such a fun one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to remove the Merry Christmas. The inspiration for this hat was this elf hat. I thought this was so fun. This is the two-toned sequence. So let me take the tags off and this bell, of course. Now I'm going to take care of these 3 bells from the inside. Just find the thread that's holding them together and cut it. Very simple. Now I'm going to cut along the edge where the green is, so we can get rid of the little elf part. And I'm just cutting off the green part altogether. And as you can see, this elf hat wears to the side, kind of like this hat. So we're going to try to see how it fits. Look at this, it fits perfectly. Oh, how fun. I gotta say it, I can't believe how this cat is sleeping under some super high lights on my table. He is just napping away. Now I'm going to hot glue the hat in place, and what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I see the sequin line on both sides. I'm not going to be pulling too much, but obviously we want to make sure that this red felt is not shown in the front. So I'm going to make a little crease just like this, and I'm going to hot glue it in place. And then from the inside as far as I can. And then of course we're going to hot glue it straight to the actual wreath form. And of course we want to make sure that the bottom and the front is also hot glued. I'm going to take this little holly flower, and now I'm going to take a scarf. I got these at the Dollar Tree. Undo the hem, and this just comes off so easy because it's not really being held. Look at this, not really hard to do. I separated my infinity scarf, and now I'm just going to measure this bottom part. And of course, give it an inch on both sides so you can fold it over, cut right there. And of course, for this, you can use anything fluffy you have on hand. Maybe some fabric, maybe another type of scarf. So whatever you have is just fine. At this point, you want to decide how big you want the bottom of the hat to be. And I'm going to just start hot gluing it in place. And now I'm just bringing it to the back. I'm giving a generous amount of hot glue in the back. I'm going to grab one of those long red scarves, and I'm going to use the pom-pom from here. And all you have to do is grab this bell that's on one end and just very carefully feel the bottom of it and cut that off. And that's what actually holds the 2 pieces together. And I'm going to be using this pom-pom for the top. To make this look just a little less like an elf hat, we're going to make a little crease and bring this part down just a little bit. So I'm going to fold it right here, some hot glue, fold it back. Now we can attach our poof. Generous amount of hot glue. I'm attaching it to the bottom right here. To decorate our little hat, I decided to grab a pick, and I'm going to take it apart. Then I got this cardinal pick, and I really wanted to use this sweet little cardinal. Now I'm going to grab some white berries. So let's just start with this branch and hot glue that in place. Then the other branch, just like that. Put my little bird right in between, just like that. Oh, this is going to be so sweet. To cover this part, I'm going to bring some berries on the tail side. Then I'm going to have some berries throughout. For the final touch, I'm adding this leaf to the side. And that's it. Our sweet little Santa hat is all done. I decided to remodel this little gnome, and you can do whatever you want. You can put a little Christmas hat over him, something like this. I was going to actually put a maroon one, but somebody kind of took over and I don't have the heart to get him off of it. But I decided to do something else. So first I'm going to just take this trim off. And then I'm going to gently remove this nose because I want to give it a little bit of an update. I'm just going to measure about how much I'm going to need. My little piece is going to be 4 inches by 4 inches. Just rounding off the corners to get rid of all that excess felt. And now I'm just hot gluing the felt onto the actual nose. And I'm only using the hot glue on the inside. Now that I have the nose all covered, I'm just going to put loads of hot glue right on the inside. And I'm going to put it right back where I originally took it from, just like that. For this top part, you can use fabric, you can use whatever you have. I just want a little green base, so I'm going to grab this piece of felt. It's 8 by 12. You can get this at any craft store, and I am going to cut a little wave on here, right in the middle, just going this way because as you see, we need to go around the nose. Then I'm going to just flip it. Then I'm going to cut around about 1 inch. You can always use these leftover pieces to cover in the back. Then about 1 inch on the other side. Do a quick check in the front and then start hot gluing in place. Now I'm grabbing some wired garland and I'm going to start attaching it right on top of the green felt. For this part, I'm definitely getting my finger protector. There you go. A little bit hot glue and then just hold it in place. A little bit on top just to make sure that it stays in place. A little bit of hot glue in the back and hot glue the other end. This little piece you can definitely save and we can use it a little bit towards the top. I love using the wired garland ties from the Dollar Tree. I use them to fill in the actual little Dollar Tree Christmas tree, the little evergreen wreath that Dollar Tree has. These are really, really helpful. The top of the gnome is all done. It's so super cute. I'm going to take the piece that we took from the top of the nose and I'm going to hot glue it back on. Make sure to cover the sharp endings on both sides. Now it's time to decorate, and with a top like this on a gnome, you can get so creative. You can decorate it like a Christmas tree, put a little star at the top. This is so much fun, but I'm going to go a little bit simpler with this. Grabbing a large pom-pom, I'm going to hot glue it to the top. And then from the same pack, I'm going to choose a medium pom-pom and put it to the side. Now I'm going to grab some buffalo check ribbon and I'm going to make a simple bow. Now simple bow is just something like this. Let me do that again. I'm going to grab it, make one loop, then I'm going to go on the other side and make a second loop. Another way of making this bow is make an awareness ribbon just like this. Pinch the center. And then right here on the loop on top, find the center on there and bring it to the center at the bottom. One more time. Awareness ribbon, pinch at the bottom, find your center at the top, and bring it together. Just like this. I'm going to bring it together with a little bit of hot glue, little dot. You don't need much. Cut off the tail. Grabbing some leftover jute cord. I'm going to bring this bow together, give it a few knots, cut that off, and now I'm going to make little angled tails just like that, and then I'm going to hot glue it in place. I'm going for very simple, elegant farmhouse look here, and then I'm going to grab that medium-sized pom-pom, a little bit of hot glue, and straight in the center. Grabbing a hairbrush, and we're going to brush all that very lightly, very gently. You don't want to pull on any of the hairs. You don't want to brush them out, but you do kind of want to give it a gentle little hair brushing. Now it's time to work on our candy cane. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this sweet little bow. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove these snowflakes. The little loop right here, we're going to cut that down because that is going to get in our way. just like that. And then I'm going to grab one of these scarves from the Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree has had it for a few years and I just got more this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this little bell, feel for the thread underneath, and just give it a little snip, and that'll take these two apart. And now what you want to do is look for the creases, put your scissors there very lightly, and just tug. And you're going to do the same thing to the other side. Usually both sides of the scarves are open, but for some reason this one has a seam on the inside. So we're just going to go from the side that's open and start feeding it through our candy cane, making sure that the seam of the scarf is in the back. And you can do this using any tubular scarf that you find. Look how cute this is. This is such a quick and easy makeover. I have the scarf on, and now I'm just going to take both of the endings and hot glue them to the back of our little candy cane wreath. I think this is going to be the quickest and sweetest little makeover. And of course, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now that our cute candy cane is covered, I'm grabbing this pom-pom trim and I'm just going to unroll it all the way out. This trim is 3 yards, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half and I'm going to find my center and I'm going to twist it. So the pom-poms are going to be going both ways. They're going to be going to the left and the right. You definitely want to get a finger protector. And now let's get started. Just going to hold it in place for just a second. I'm just making sure that everything is aligning nicely. I got my second little connection and I'm going to hot glue it just underneath right there on both sides. Just throw some hot glue on there as you keep on going and just twisting the ribbon around. Same thing, a little bit of hot glue underneath. And let me just hot glue the ending in place. At this point, you can definitely add whatever you want. Maybe a bow right here, maybe some greenery. But I'm going to leave it as is because this is going to go in my party room where I have everything red and white. And I just think this is a sweet little makeover and so super easy. Let's get started on this wreath. I'm using this square wreath form. I'm going to be using these burlap ribbon to wrap around the wreath, and then to decorate I am going to be using this gold and the green burlap. I will also be using these gorgeous picks that I got and these that I got from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start with the center here, cross over, because I want it to go on an angle, and just give it a dab of hot glue just so it holds it. Over here in the middle, I want the bottom of this part and the top of this part to overlap. That way we have a nice thick layer. Corners here are a little tricky, but you know what? Nothing we can't handle, right you guys? So the way I do my corner is I will go to the corner and I will loop it back. And I'm going to give it just a tab of hot glue right here. And now I'm taking and I'm folding a little bit of this inside ribbon underneath here, because what I want to do is I want to give it a nice secure corner right here. And I'm bringing my other edge straight up to the corner, and this is where we're gonna go up again.
I've been working so much lately, I can barely find the time to sleep. Yeah, I spend my time running around, keeping people pleased. But this is my favorite holiday. It's a chance to stop.
Okay, you guys, so I'm coming to the end and I have a little piece left. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm not going to go over here because I'm going to have a bow in this corner anyway. And I'm just going to just make sure that this part is covered. And yes, this part is going to go in the front, but there will be greenery here, so that part will be covered also. Okay, this wreath looks really clean, very beautiful, and we are going to work on this corner right here. And the way I'm gonna do it is you can either hang it like this, or you could hang it like in a diamond shape. The first thing I want to do is I want to do the greenery and see if I need to add any. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to separate the little greenery and I'm going to put this gold in between, so to make it look like it was all one piece. I did the same thing to the second one as I did to the first one, and I'm just going to hot glue it in place. Let's get started on the bow. We have gold, we have green. On top of that, bring in some white. When I do bows like this, what I like to do is, because the endings are so kind of rugged, first thing I'm going to do is bring it together, hold it in place, and I'm going to fold it. Yeah, spend my time running around. And this time I'm going to do 2 dabs on the sides. Now that I have it nice and secured, this bow is going to be 24 inches. So if you're doing the same ribbon or a similar ribbon, you're going to need about 24 inches for this particular bow. Making our Christmas memories. I've been wrapping presents. Let's find our center. After I found my center, I'm going to make a simple bow, going one way and going the other way. And when we wake up in the morning, I'm gonna play those carols that you love. We'll be singing all them. Here's how I bring these together usually. I fold it in half, and then 1 down and 2 down. And that is how I usually bring them together. I'm using a floral wire for this bow today. Isn't this how it's supposed to be? Making our Christmas memory. I think this bow turned out absolutely cute. I want to give more greenery over here to cover this area up. I'm going to take another piece of this grosgrain ribbon. I just feel like using grosgrain ribbon in my projects, it makes it look so much more expensive. This wreath, I'm going to be using the willow wreath, and this one is 12 inches. They do come in 2 different sizes. They come in 9-inch and 12-inch, and I'm going to be using the bigger one. Because this wreath is going to be very elegant, I wanted to spray paint the wreath white. So I gave it 2 coats of this Rust-Oleum paint and primer, and 1 coat of this acrylic coating, and this is by Krylon. It doesn't matter really what you use, what company or whatnot. I used gloss because that's what I had on hand. You don't have to. You could do matte. It's still going to end up very elegant and beautiful. And all we need is just a beautiful white layer. And here is how my wreath looks painted and covered in the acrylic coating. Now I'm going to grab some ornaments, and what I'm going to do is I am going to give them 1 coat of chalk paint. Next, I'm grabbing 5 medium ornaments from the Dollar Tree. These are gold, but we're actually going to paint them white. And now I'm going to grab my rose gold. This is by Craftsmart, and I only paid $1.99 for it at Michael's. I think this is not bad for some really, really pretty paint here. And of course, this is metallic paint. I'm going to grab one of my clamps here. Look how pretty that is turning out. At this point, I try to go a certain way, either up and down or sideways. I'm done with the first coat, but it's kind of like, you know how when you're doing your nails and you just did one coat, you need the second one for the actual color to stand out and to look really pretty. So that is what I'm going to do next. All right, what a difference a second coat makes, right? So I'm going to finish up giving the rest of these a second coat, but look at this. It just looks beautiful and it's ready to go on our wreath. The reason we're doing a glam wreath today is because I'm collaborating with my very sweet friend Tammy from Glam Queen of DIY. She absolutely is the queen because the things she makes, vases and tablescapes and everything, is so beautiful and glam, and she also can make a gorgeous wreath. After watching this video, I would love for you to go visit Tammy and subscribe to her channel. She actually has a few of them and I'll list them in the description box below. And if you're coming from Tammy's channel, welcome my sweet friends. We absolutely love wreaths and centerpieces on DIY with Nadia. Now it's time to warm up the glue guns and put this wreath together. I'm going to start with these branches. They are this kind of faint pink, but their whole purpose is to give a little shimmer to this wreath. It's not necessarily to be pink kind of in your face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see where these branches end and begin. Let's see here. Okay. I'm going to layer 3 on top of each other and I'm going to bend them. My wreath is going to be 2/3 full, and then there you go. I'm just going to start pushing them in between the little wooden pieces here. And then we're going to hot glue these later. Three branches on top, and then I'm going to grab one branch from another one, and I'm going to do 3 branches on the bottom. There you go. Very light, very faint. Next, I'm going to bring my favorite fern in here, and this is the frosted fern. I already took one apart, so it's a little quicker for us here. But basically, we're going to start with these long ones. And you might need maybe 2 to 3 of these, depending on how much you fill, and also depending on how big of a wreath form you're going to have. And this first one, I am going to hot glue this one in place. When you're putting wreaths like this together, you work with greenery first and then you bring in the flowers, unless the flowers are really big. And in this case, they are, comparing to this form. I'm bringing in these poinsettias for them. They usually come 4 on one of the stems. So we're going to use up 1 poinsettia, there you go, and then 2 more. All right, I'm going to hot glue more of the greenery. All right, and these are frosted. So I'm going to start with the most frosted one and put in the center, which is right there. And I'm going to place it first because there's a plasticky part right here. I want it to go in between the vines here, and then drop some hot glue in the back. It looks like I'm going to bring in 1 more right there. Oh, this is going to be so pretty. And I'm just going to go around and hot glue them in place. Now the ornaments. Since we have the big elements in, I'm going to start bringing in these berries, and you can bring in maybe white berries, but I'm going to bring in pink, even though it's a little bit of contrast. because it's a little bit of contrast and because we still have these, and this is going to be our white kind of to balance everything off at the end. And as you can see with my ornaments, I went in a zigzag. With my berries, I'm going to go on the opposite side of the ornament. So my ornament here, berry here, ornament here, berry here, and of course, same thing here. And then with the berries, I'm also going to put a bundle on top. Now I'm going to grab my ferns that are the short little pieces, and I'm going to start filling in all around, starting from the top, and just kind of work it in throughout the whole wreath. Our wreath is pretty complete. Now I'm just going to go right here where we have all this kind of mess going on, and just tuck in the very ends here and there so they're held in place. This side is already just nice and neat. This one's still sticking out. If you like it sticking out like that, then that's fine. Then just leave it alone. But I just wanted it to be just a little bit on the neater side. To hang the wreath, I'm going to use this sheer white ribbon. I usually try to go in between the willow branches here if I can find a way in. With the letter opener, I kind of made way here, and then I'm just going to stick my ribbon right next to it, and then cut it, loop it. Now I just knotted it together, and the knot I'm going to just move to the back, and that's it. And there you go. We have a way to hang it, and you have a beautiful pink glam wintry wreath. Basics you're going to need for this wreath. Of course, you're going to need a metal cross-shaped wreath form. Then these come around during Christmas time. They come in a pack of 6. Then you're going to need some sort of a green ribbon. To finish off the bow, I'm going to be using a combo of gold and red ribbon because I thought this would look perfect for a classic wreath. To start on the base of the wreath, I'm going to put some hot glue on the end, just like that. And I'm going to wrap about an inch in right here and then fold it over so you have that bottom part covered and it'll stick all together. Next, I'm just going to start wrapping around, and I also want this part to be nice and neat. And when I'm wrapping, I'm just going over this wired edge with my next wired edge, and that's it. And then wired edge over the last wired edge, and then once in a while a dot of hot glue right there, or a little line. I went a little heavy there. And then we're just going to go around and around. If you're wondering about my little hot glue protector, I get these at the Dollar Tree. They come 3 in a pack, which is kind of nice, and I've had this one for a long time, so they last and they just make a very nice, helpful friend when you're using hot glue. No need to burn ourselves. I'm coming to the edge here, and I'm going to cover right here, and I'm going to give it a dot of hot glue right there before I make my way to the top. I'm just zigzagging straight to the back. Don't forget, we're going to have a big old bow right here, and we're still going to cover this part. When it comes to this, I'm going to squeeze this side of the ribbon, and then I'm going to give it just a little bit of hot glue. And that way I'm going to continue going, and you're going to have the same look as on this side. Especially if you're going to hot glue the little picks onto your wreath, this is going to be a nice way to keep the back nicely. On the end, I'm going to come around. This is where you kind of use a little bit more hot glue because you want to make sure that all of this looks good. And I'm going to straighten out my ribbon just like this. Give it a little bit of hot glue on that edge right there to bring these two together. Then the tail I cut off, I'm just going to hot glue right there, and then give it a lot of hot glue right here and on the inside, and bring it over. And there you go, a nice neat fold. Now I'm going to repeat the same process going from side to side of the cross. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use these two little branches to cover the corner of our little cross. There you go. So that's covered. And then of course we're going to need to cover these sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the next pick, and right there where the three little branches unite underneath, I'm going to give it a little bend. I'm going to take the next pick, and right underneath the connection, I'm going to bend it the other way, and I'm going to put it right there. Now I have three I can put together. Grabbing my floral wire, I'm going to go through the three of them. You can hardly see my wire. I'm going to just give it a few twists here. Set it exactly where I need it to be. I'm pushing my wire through on both sides of these bars right here, on these two center ones. Then going to the back and giving it a few twists. After I twist it, I'm going to fold it and fold it back like I usually do. The reason I put it around both bars is, first of all, look at this, it's solid. Second of all, if you put it through the center, you have a chance of them either falling out or something like that. This way, the bars are holding the branches in place. At this point, I'm going to cut off these long stems here because I don't want them to show while I'm putting the next layer on. And basically from now on, I'm going to be getting rid of these because we want to make sure we're just covering and moving on. I feel like this one needs to be straight. It's hard to see from the side. There you go. Does that look good? Yes. Now that I see how I like it, I'm going to take this one because this one's in the center. I kind of want to make sure that that one's nice and secured. After the middle one is secured, I'm going to attach this next pair, and that is exactly what I'm going to be doing, just moving on and just layering them, making sure they look nice. But the most important thing, if you're not using a hot glue gun, make sure you put that wire over the two middle rows right here on the cross. That way you know it's nice and secure. This is how much I have done so far. I've used up 2 packs and 2 more branches from the next pack kind of, and so it's nice and full. If I feel like it needs anything added later on, we can definitely do that. Now I'm going to do the corners here, and don't forget, we are going to have a bow here. And as we're doing the sides, they're all going to face towards the center. So my branches on this side are going to face this way. These are going to face this way. And the ones at the top are going to face this way. They're all going to face in. To make it easier, I'm just going to remove the little wires. And we're going to do the same thing we did at the bottom, which is bring one all the way to the top. That's going to be our main one. And then we're going to bend one this way to cover this area. Bend another one this way to cover this area. And we may be done here because, as I said, my bow is going to be a multi-layer bow, so it's going to take up this area. For right now, I'm going to just put my wire through the center to unite all 3. And then I'm going to follow the same pattern to the sides. Now it's time to make a bow, and I'm going to be using my bow maker just because it's so much easier when you're layering ribbon to be using one of these. So I'm going to grab this ribbon. This ribbon was thrifted, so I'm not quite sure where it was from originally. And the first thing I want to do is I want to see how big I want my loops to be. On my measurement, the loop that I measured is 10 inches. So on my bow maker, I'm going to make 5-inch loops. First, I want to measure the tail, and this time I don't want my tails to be too long. And this ribbon is double-sided. It does have a front and a back. So the first I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it because I want my tail to be that sparkly gold. And then I'm going to go to the 5 inches right here. Measure off my 5 inches, and I'm going to twist. Measure off my next 5 inches and twist again. And I'm going to make 4 loops. Before cutting my tail, I want to make sure that they're the same size. And I'm going to put this tail on top. This one, I believe, is from the Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree usually has this one around Christmas time. I'm going to measure my tail. And I want my tail to be just a little longer than my loops. And I'm going to do the same thing here, which is I'm going to make it the same length loops, which is 5 inches. And I'm going to do 4 loops. I'm just going to measure against this one. And as you saw, my first bow, I started at the bottom, ended on top. My second layer, I started with my tail on top and ended at the bottom. This is just me balancing things out. This next ribbon is a little bit on the short side. This is really kind of left over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on here and I'm going to do 3-inch loops, hoping that this will carry me through. Let's see here, 3 inches. And I think I am good with it. I think this is perfect. Perfection. So I got my 3 inches and of course, started at the top, right on top of the red, and ended right on top of the red. With this ribbon, I'm going to start on the side of the gold. And with this ribbon, I'm not going to twist because it pretty much looks the same on both sides. And we're going to keep to that 3-inch mark. All right, and I managed to do 3 inches on this bow too. And we should be all set. Now I'm going to grab my zip tie and just grabbing it by the center just as it is. I'm going to zip tie this bow together. Cut this off. Grabbing another zip tie, I'm going to go across our bow and straight onto our wreath. Let's flip this in the back. Let's bring the zip tie together. And I'm really making it tight in the back. My bow is on already, but before I straighten that out, I'm going to cover the back. The way I want to do this is I'm going to put a nice solid line of hot glue right there. Put my ribbon. And then fold my ribbon right on that edge. I'm going to hot glue kind of very lightly. Then I'm going to go 1 inch above here, fold it over, and I'm just going to put the hot glue right on the ribbon so I know exactly how much I'm going to need. Same thing on this side. I want this wreath to be permanent. That is why I use the wires. So I wanted to make sure that I cover that up. Look at this, nice, beautiful, and it's covered. To hang the wreath, I'm grabbing some floral wire and I'm grabbing a good chunk of it. Going to fold it in half because this one's a little bit on the softer side. And all I'm doing is I'm twisting it and I'm going to twist the other side too. Now this wire is twice as strong. I fed my wire through the 2 center rows before they hit that intersection so that we can have a nice balanced wreath. I'm going to take 1/3 of the wire and on the other side I'm going to have 2/3 of the wire. I'm going to give it 2 twists and the longer wire, that's going to be our loop. We're just going to loop it just like this. This is our longer one. And then I'm going to twist it. I'm going to give it a few twists. And then I'm going to bring the second one and then twist it around the neck of the actual loop. And so basically I'm locking it in. I like using this technique because you don't have to use really heavy duty wire that's heavy on your hands. You just use a softer wire, but make it strong by twisting it. That's it. Now I have a good solid connection to hang the wreath. And start prettying things up. You're just balancing things out. You have red here and then red to the sides. You're the boss here. Tell the ribbon where to go. These center ones, I'm just opening them up and twisting them and doing the same thing to the gold ones. Basically, we're going to have a poof and then nice organized little bow on the outside of that. If your loops don't want to listen like this one over here, give it a little twist and put it in place. Once you have your bow all sorted out, now it's time to cut the tails. And you can either do the dovetails or you can do an angled tail. I'm going to do angled. That's just what I'm in the mood for. And then I'm going to cut this one a little shorter. These two are going to be a little longer, which is fine. And I'm going to turn this around and do the exact same thing on this side. Now it's time to look around and see if you want to add any more greenery, if you feel like your wreath needs it. And that's it. We are done with this gorgeous and very simple wreath. For this wreath, we are using a metal circle. I'll explain in a second where it came from. Some sort of centerpiece, a wired garland, some wooden beads, jute twine, and some of this sparkly vase filler. Grabbing this Dollar Tree wired garland and putting it around my circle here. And I used 6 pieces altogether. Now with the wired circle, that is actually the top of a garbage can that's from the Dollar Tree. I used the garbage can in a previous project a while ago, and I will insert the video right here so you can see how I used the rest of the garbage can. But I kept the rim, I kept the top, and this is what I'm doing with the top of the Dollar Tree garbage can. Now for the centerpiece. I'm grabbing some of these wooden beads, and these are 14 millimeters each in diameter. And at first I put 7 on, then measured and realized I wanted 1 more, so then I added the 8th bead. The ornament I'm using in the middle of my beads is actually a Dollar Tree ornament that I used in the previous project. Originally it did look like this, but I really loved it empty and clean. Now to make sure the tree is going to be centered, I'm grabbing a little mini bead, and it's bigger than the little hole in the tree, and I'm just feeding it through, and that's just going to hold my Christmas tree centered without twisting in the middle of my wreath. Now I'm adding the same amount of beads to the right side that I already added to the left. After adjusting it to the height that I want, I'm going to attach both of the ends to the metal wreath. To decorate my wreath, I'm going to grab these vase fillers from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using the gold ones in different sizes and just hot glue them throughout the wreath. At this point, you can definitely stop and be done with the wreath, and I'll include a picture of what it would look like in a second, but I just felt like something needed to be put on the tree, so I continued and added a little bit of embellishment to the Christmas tree. To decorate the tree, I'm going to use another piece of wired garland about 4 inches in length, and I'm going to put it at the top of the tree. Now if you're wondering why did I do that, there was greenery already on the tree. Yes, but that greenery was a lighter color and it would clash with my garland. This way it matches and it looks really good. I'm just cutting that in the middle, hot gluing the garland pieces to the top of my tree, and then on top of that I'm going to hot glue a gold little ball from the vase fillers. I'm starting this project with a foam Dollar Tree wreath and also a vintage ribbon that I had on hand. It is a gorgeous olive color and I decided to use it for this wreath. To get this project started, I'm hot gluing the ribbon in place, wrapping it around the wreath all the way around and hot gluing it in place once again. Next, I'm grabbing some branches that I found on my walk in a forest preserve and I painted them white, gave most of them 2 coats of chalk paint. I'm going to have branches going horizontally and vertically, and I'm just overlaying them, making them fit in the middle so it's not too bulky, and just trying to work them in so they fit nice and perfect. And I'm trying to go outside the wreath a little bit. And if you don't like the way it's sticking out, you can always just cut it down with wire cutters, and that's why I have those on my table. As I find a perfect spot for each branch, I'm hot gluing them in place straight to the wreath and also to each other. For greenery, I'm using my favorite spring florals from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just picking out longer branches that I thought would look really nice, and then I'm grabbing some of the ones with the yellow flowers just because I thought it would look so beautiful with the olive ribbon. And to top it all off, in the center I'm attaching a rose that I got at Goodwill. I'll attach the video where I hauled this rose along with some other things. To hang the wreath, I'm just grabbing a leftover piece of ribbon from a previous project and making a little loop. For this bow, I will be using a red and a gold ribbon. They're both 2.5 inches, and they're also both 3 yards. They're from the Dollar Tree. And I'm doing this for someone who has a Christmas tree that is gold, silver, and red. We're going to incorporate the silver a little differently here. the fold is going to be very noticeable. I am going to cut this off. And I just let that roll off my table. Next, I'm going to bring in the red one, and this one, the crease is going to be shown too. So I'm just going to cut that off right on that crease. I'm going to overlay it. I think this looks so beautiful overlapping. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a 12-inch tail. So I'm measuring that off and then bringing my 12 inches right there to the center, because this is going to be the center of the bow and it's going to be at 6 inches. We're going to have 12-inch loops, which means 6 inches if we kind of lay them flat. So this is going to be a great mark for us. I'm going to flip it upside down and start measuring my loops. I'm going to bring the loop over because this ribbon does have a front and back end. So you want the front end to always be on the outside of your bow. I got my 6 inches right here. Made my loop. Then to go on this side, I'm going to twist it in the middle. That way the outside of this ribbon right here is going to be on the outside of the loop. I'm going to go down to the 12-inch mark right here, which will make it 6 inches. And then go back to the center. Then I'm going to take them and twist them right there at the 6-inch mark. Taking the outside of my ribbon to the outside again. Then going to 0. Then going back to our 6-inch mark. And then twisting it. Now, if you feel like this is getting just a little bit too much and it's kind of hard for you to keep it, that's all right. Grab your floral wire and just bring it together and then continue working your way up. I just wanted to show you how to do this without a bow maker, but if you do want me to grab one and start showing you bows with the bow maker, please let me know, and once in a while I'll use that. Okay. Going back to 12, and I'm just going to continue doing this until my ribbon runs out. All right, I have this tail left over, but if I made another loop, the tails would just be a little too short, so I'm going to keep it at that. Now I'm bringing my floral wire in. And this is just floral wire from the Dollar Tree. And before I tighten it up, I'm going to fold my bow in half, right there, just to make sure I have everything centered. There you go. All of these are nice and even. And if you're having a hard time with a ribbon, here's what I do sometimes, because this one's a little thin. As I grab little pliers or anything you have on hand. This is just a needle holder right here. And I'm just going to pinch it and then work my ribbon around that. That way it's all secure and you don't have to play around with it. And then now I'm just, there you go. Going to twirl it, and that way you can play around and make it tighter and tighter as much as you need it to be. Okay, now that we have our bow secured in the center, I am going to first measure my tails off, just so we don't have to mess with it later. But I like to wait to do the little dovetails all the way at the end. With this ribbon, it should be fine, but usually if I'm afraid a ribbon would fray, I like to, wait till the end. So now what I'm going to do is one side of the tail, I'm going to put on one side. The other side, I'm going to pull on the other side. And this is the fun part. We're going to start taking them apart. And start playing with the bow itself. Okay, look at this. We have a big, beautiful bow, and I only opened up one side. I'm going to continue opening it up on the other side. Look at this. We didn't use anything. All we used was a little ruler. And look at this, a beautiful bow. Now I'm going to make little V's right here.
dovetails, ducktails, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes people get upset if I call it the wrong name, but I'm like, I don't know, it's a little tail. I'm just gonna call it tail. I'm just going to make a little V-shaped tail. All right. And then the last one. And look how big this bow is. I'm going to show you what it looks like on my little tree, but on her big tree, it's going to look so perfect. Look how pretty this bow is. I'm so in love with this bow. All right, so I was thinking whether I wanted to do banner tails or not on this one, and I'm going to up to doing them just because this ribbon right here kind of curls, so it kind of looks almost sloppy, but it's not, obviously. So all I'm going to do is just make little ribbons going about 2/3 from the beginning of my tail right here, because I figure the bow's going to be on top of the tree and then these tails are going to go down. So I'm just going to do it a few inches off of the bottom, and this will straighten it out. As you can see, this went from kind of being wrinkled like this to a nice little tail. And so of course I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to measure it real quick so I know how much to bend on the other side. All right, so let me go a little slower here. When I decided where I'm going to go, I'm going to pinch it up. Just like that, pinch the bow up. Then with these two fingers, you're going to hold it and bring it back. And then you're going to have a little, kind of a little heart almost right here, and then bam, the tail going out this way. And there you go. There's the tail. Let me measure this real quick. I'm going to bend it up. I'm going to pinch it on the sides where we have the wire, and then just curl it back right there. And that's it. You have your little ribbon tails. Next, I'm going to use this little silver branch to bring silver into the bow, because her tree has red, gold, and silver. And what I'm going to do is just cut it up into little pieces right here. I have them all cut up. Going to bend it about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. This is going to help me secure it to the bow. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little silver branches, bend them a little bit, and just start placing them where I feel like they need to go, and then we're going to hot glue them in place. All of this is pretty much Mod Podged on here, so in order to make sure that this little branch stays in place, I removed it from this part that's going to get hot glue on it to attach it to the bow itself. Now I have my silver branches in place. I'm going to just start hot gluing them to the bow itself. And of course, I'm going to try to do it where you won't be able to see the hot glue behind and underneath the actual bows or the actual loops. That's it. I'm just going to finish off doing the other branches, and our bow is complete. What do you guys think? And of course, I would love to know if you're gonna give it a try and what colors you're going to be using, because you can definitely do this in so many color combos. And the last step is how we're going to attach this to the actual tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 20 gauge wire that's 18 inches. I'm going to overlap it about 1 inch. I know it's hard to tell. And I'm just going to twist it. And then this part that's kind of ugly is going to actually go in the middle of the bow. But before I do that, I'm going to flatten it. And this is going to, and then twist it just a little bit there. Grabbing my little needle holder here. And here I'm just twisting it in place. And then I'm going to twist the other side. This is just going to make it nice and strong. You don't need this to be too long. All you need to do is to attach it to the top branch. And then I'm going to go in the middle here. I gave it 2 twists in the back, and now you have this strong wire to attach it to the top of the tree. Or sometimes it'll hold if you just put it right inside the tree. And that's it. But this is plenty. This is more than enough to wrap it around that top branch. If you made it this far in the video, a humble thank you from the bottom of my heart to you, my friend. Thank you so much for staying and for watching. In the comments below, I would love to know which wreath was your favorite and what is your Christmas style. Do you decorate glam? Do you decorate traditional? Or do you have specific colors that you gravitate to? I would love to hear that. Thank you so much for being with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, hit the bell button so you are notified every time a video comes out. Once again, thank you and have a beautiful and blessed day.